Good evening. I'll call the meeting of the Tainter Lake Rehabilitation District to order. Approval of the agenda and the regular minutes of the May 16th meeting and any May committee meeting minutes that were submitted. I don't know that there were any minutes that were submitted, so it's just the agenda and the approval of the last meeting's minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's been a motion and a second to approve the minutes in the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Recognition of visitor and visitor comments. Would anybody like to make a comment? Adam? You know, turn not, hit the little person.
Okay. My name is Adam Mux. Live at E64648 67th Avenue. I'm a member of the Aquatic Vegetation Committee, Subcommittee. First of all, I'd like to thank the Board of Commissioners for approving our proposal in the April meeting and moving our $39,000 aquatic plant harvesting project forward to the annual meeting. I feel like this will be a beneficial project to our lake. Chuck and I have been working for the past year and learning a lot about the plants in our lake and what's currently going on. I've provided you guys with these photos to kind of explain my perspective and possibly our perspective. The first photo is from this season already. This is eastern upper Tainter Lake, and what you're seeing is surfaced curly leaf pondweed. That seems to be the earliest plant that we saw, and trapping a large amount of duckweed. The next photo is from last summer. And basically that's what happens when this duckweed that's entrapped in surfaced aquatic plants bakes in the sun. It seems to be a breeding ground for cyanobacteria. And this is extremely odorous and hazardous. And I think we're going to see that again this summer. Fortunately, the rain seems to have delayed that a little bit. Third picture is from last summer. As you can see, massive amount of aquatic plants. Navigation's impossible, smell is horrendous. It's just overwhelming. Next photo is in the Hay River Bay. So this would be northwest of the County Road D bridge. And that bay is typically covered in aquatic plants. This is this spring already. And what we're showing in this photo is the decomposition of these plants and what it's doing to the bed load. I just stabbed a rake into the bottom of the lake and it just plumes up mud and sediment. And I think that this is nutrient loaded sediment that goes into the bed load every season. And that's just what's happening without removing these plants. This is the bed load that is in an area of heavy aquatic plant matter, and it's just decomposing muck. And this was previously sandy and gravel bed load, and I would speculate that this muck is heavily loaded with nutrients from decomposition of aquatic plants. The next photo, I apologize, it's a little blurry. I got this from a commercial harvester site. I believe it was Inland Harvester. And this is just how the harvester works and can remove plant matter. I believe this is coontail and trapping a lot of duckweed. So with harvesting, you'll get whatever plant, you'll cut whatever plant is there and potentially capture some duckweed. And I'm sure people around the lake have seen the massive release of duckweed throughout the entire lake this week with our heavy rains. Last photo is plants that we believe we have identified. This is from this spring, curly leaf pondweed, what's the next one, Chuck? Flat pondweed, coontail, and elodea. They're all present and they're all considered invasive. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure Chuck will be a better resource.
Nice shift.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? From the board?
Out of the four bad ones, how many good plants are in?
I'll take this one. There's hardly any, and the reason is because of the green water and cyanobacteria. And I thought we could go and research and find a good plant it ourselves. And I spent all the weekend and I really couldn't find anything, so I talked to a DNR guy, plant biologist out of Eau Claire, and he said you can't do any planting until you clean up the green water. Good question, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, anybody else want to speak? Okay. Moving on. Educational and informational speakers. Jamie Lindeen was he's the president of the Chautauqua Lakes Protection Association. He was supposed to speak tonight. We were going to pipe him in, but he had a conflict with another meeting. So we're attempting to reschedule Jamie for August. I talked to Jamie. They're doing some interesting things in Chautauqua. And I'll let him kind of talk to you about. I have a two-part article that one of his members wrote. I will forward it to board members. They wrote about the Chautauqua chain and some things, and they won an award for citizens reporting or something like that. But he shared that with me, and I will share that with you. Maybe Jim, you could post it on the website as related information if we have a page that's appropriate for that. But they have, I think they're fighting some invasive stuff. They did some, they actually did some bed samples of the sediment. And they were trying to figure out if they could harvest that sediment and then spread it on fields. They were worried that they had some heavy metals in it or some arsenic or whatever from the logging days. That wasn't the case, but as of a lot of these lakes, they had high in iron content, and they didn't know if farmers would want to add more iron to their soil. So that's kind of where we could ask them for an update, but they're dealing with some of the same stuff that we are. And so I thought it would be interesting. The other connection I made is with a gentleman at Red Cedar Lake. And they have an association up there that's very active, and it's pretty sophisticated association where they have each board member has a certain committee that they have to run and responsibilities, and they're doing a lot of testing at the headwaters. So I'm trying to get them for maybe September. So that's just a little bit on that. Commissioner communication. Does any of the commissioners have information they would like to communicate?
I do.
Okay, Tom?
2 weeks ago, Al and I attended the Red Cedar River Water Quality meeting on June 6th. This is a group that gets together every 2 months. And most of the agenda focus was on writing a new 10-year plan. The group was trying to decide kind of the meeting format and what groups to include for public meetings. This is a group that's largely focused on agriculture, but there's certainly room for lake groups like ours as well. It's good to hear the agricultural side of it, and I think the agricultural people like to hear what us lake people think of it as well. Maybe they don't, I don't know, but they get our opinions anyways. And it's always a good meeting, takes a couple hours and it's well worth the time. That's it for me.
Pete? Jim? Anything?
Yep.
Other than what's on the agenda? Anybody else? Just a reminder that we have the annual meeting as August 3rd at 10 a.m. in the high school auditorium. Okay. Budget, notice and budget information, will be sent in the mail to all, we'll attempt. Our intent is to send, agenda and budget and packet to everybody, that's a property owner. I say attempt, every once in a while you get somebody that sold their property or whatever, but we'll make a good faith effort to get that information to everybody. That will have to be in the mail. My goal is to have that packet of information out and in the hands of L&M by June, or at least in my, so I can run it over to L&M June 30th. So around the 4th, it can go out. It takes them maybe a week to put it out. That gets it out 14 days in advance, or I'd like to have people have a little bit more time than just the minimum to get that. So if they're, Chuck and Adam have already put together a bit of a spiel for the harvesting. Any of the other projects, I'd appreciate a short blurb. If your proposal passes, I'd like something from you. And I don't know what you guys think about the no wake. I don't know. Well, if you want to put together a little bit something, Jim, maybe a paragraph or two on that, we can. If you don't, then you're stuck with what I put in there. And if anybody wants to, I think what I'll do is I'll get a draft copy of all of that and send it out for your comments and corrections. Don't worry, I'm a big boy. If you see anything wrong, make sure you correct it. I'd rather be accurate than not. And so get that to me by June 30th. I'll get that out to you. I'll give you a couple of days notice. So my goal is to really have it done by next week. So that gives us plenty of time. Okay, anything else? Treasurer's report?
Our balance as of today is $11,184.43. Tom, I did text
Got
that
it.
to you too. And I sent out a year-to-date income statement a couple weeks ago to everybody. That was August through May. So if there's any questions about what's on there, I'd be happy to answer them. Not a lot of action in May, just some reimbursements for the Lakes Convention and Colfax Messenger bill. And we had some donations thanks to Chuck's birthday. Families donating money to the Lake District for his birthday present, and received one more tax levy payment in May.
I'm just not used to getting tax levy payments of $25. Everybody thinks we get these huge checks, and it was from the town of Sherman, it was $25. And I think we're gonna get the balance in August, I think is what we
Yes.
get and just reading off your statement that you sent, we have a net assets of $7,227.61, which basically means from to date what we have in revenues with expenditures. That's what we have as a positive balance. If I am schooled correctly and
You are right.
And-
You got her.
going from fund accounting to business accounting.
You got it.
That's kind of a
That's what we're, there will be some more expenses here coming down the stretch, but we may have some money left there at the end of the year. but we
Okay.
could roll over into the following year like we talked about last meeting, so.
Okay, good. Thank you. Do I have a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
I moved to accept treasurer's report.
Second?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to accept the treasurer's report. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, discussion and action. Remember, on anything that has an approval on it, I would like a motion first and then a second. And then discussion, okay? I'm trying to be a little more formal so that what it does is if people want to make amendments, it makes amendments cleaner than having to restate a motion. So I'm just saying that now because the public, just so that you know, we're trying to adhere loosely to Robert's Rules of Order where you make a motion first, then a second, then you have the discussion, not the discussion before the motion, okay? And so that's, I don't want it to appear that everything is already scripted. It's just that in other words, to get a discussion, you have to have a motion. First of all, committee reports, sedimentation,
Nothing to report.
okay. Aquatic vegetation,
Adam Mux and myself have been monitoring and going out on the lake and logging in where our weeds are and where they've kind of moved from the last week or 10 days. And of course, they are spreading and I'm a little worried now if we get some sunshine, what's gonna happen. Also, we contacted Alex Smith, who is our DNR mentor, and we are still on schedule sometime in July for a Tainter Lake plant survey. That's where the DNR comes in via boat and a rake and identifies all the plants that we have, the weeds that we have, and logs it into a map. And the concentration is listed, so it's really good and it'll help us out when we go to harvest next year. We have Nick Johnson, co-owner and general manager of Aquatic Plant Management, also called APM, coming as a guest speaker to our next board meeting on Thursday, July 18th. And Adam and I and Nick are gonna go out on our pontoons and take a little tour of the lake before the meeting, and we can give you kind of a state of where the lake is on our next meeting. We've also received a statement of work, also called SOW from APM, which highlights the APM services, the deliverables, and client responsibility for 14 days of mechanical harvesting for 2025. And that's at a cost of $39,000 and includes 2 trips of 7 days each of harvesting. And we realize that this has to be approved at our board meeting. So I will try to get that statement of work out to everybody on the board early next week, and you can take a look at it and write me any comments or questions you have, and I'll get back to APM on that.
if I remember correctly, you also said they will hold the price for 2025.
Exactly right. They are.
I encourage you to make mention of that when you
Okay.
talk to that
Will do.
because it isn't a contract for this year. It's gonna escalate for next year. It's a contract for 2025.
Right.
Any questions for Chuck? Strategic planning, I included that in your board packet. We did a project outline and sent it to 6 consulting firms. 2 have already withdrawn. One, the guy's retiring. I didn't think there was a good fit there anyway, but I got a list from Chase Cummings and I sent it to all of those people. The other one was from Western Wisconsin. They're out of Eau Claire. planning, they do, planning. Oh, I can't remember their name. They, said that they usually, because they're a governmental agency, they don't compete with private contractors. But Chris Straight, who's the contact person, said if we get into a bind, he's willing to meet with us for nothing and just help us with the planning part. I'm sensing that there may be some, we may have to work to get a consultant. There's people out there wanting the work, so more on that later, but what we have is we've outlined what we would expect from a consultant and what we're looking for.
Al was Bloomer, Dave Bloomer, the guy that retired out of Shitek.
yeah.
I had heard a rumor, but I wasn't sure. So I sent you that information. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. His wife used to teach for me in the Shitek system, so
Okay.
anyway. I knew him when they were just married, but it makes it easier for me. Anything else that on the committees? The other thing, I just wanted to thank everybody for their work on their committees. I think everybody's been doing a really nice job of doing this and so that and I'm glad that this group has trusted the committees to do their work so that all the board members don't feel that they have to be at every committee meeting, which makes it kind of nice. Otherwise, you just have a whole bunch of board meetings is really what it turns into instead of committees doing the work, reporting to the board. Thank you. And I just wanted to also thank the board, all of you for all of your work because everybody on this board has contributed in a positive manner to moving the ball forward and everybody's taken a hold of something and it's nice and I appreciate that. It makes me scramble a little bit to pull everything together to report it, but that's a good problem to have. So I wanted to make sure I thanked you. So thank you. Okay, the first thing we have is on the agenda is the approval of the proposed 2025 budget. Now, looking at this, we may have one thing a little bit out of whack here. In other words, the carp bounty and the fish stocking proposal, which is a part of that budget. The approval for that is after the approval of the budget. So maybe I could have a motion to move number 5 before we approve the budget. It doesn't make sense to approve a component, or the whole budget before you approve the component. I missed that. There's been a motion and a second to move the approval of the carp bounty and fish stocking proposal before the budget discussion and approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I hate to do it to you, Tom, but you're up.
Not a problem. I submitted a water clarity project proposal. And I'll just read you what I wrote word for word here. It's fairly short. Improving the water clarity on Tainter Lake will likely consist of several different projects that combined will make a difference. It is highly unlikely that we will hit a home run and see significant improvement from just one project. As we have discussed, one area we can help control is to reduce our rough fish population. Our DNR fish biologist, Casey O'Lally, suggested a carp tournament and has a recommendation of an individual that will help us set up the tournament. We know this is an effective way to rid the lake of many rough fish, and with some volunteers, we can make it work. My suggestion is to budget $3,000 for a rough fish tournament, and we will determine the rules at a later date. Pay a bounty of as much as $2 per rough fish and set a goal of 1,200 to 1,300 fish. We can use the extra money for costs associated with the tournament. We may have to run this contest for a few years. And I have to make that, I want to repeat that. We may have to do this for a few years. Another successful method to reduce rough fish is to add predator fish. With increased numbers, bluegill, walleye, and northern are all predators that will help reduce rough fish population. Pricing, size, and service at fish farms are all different, but they range from $3 to $4 per walleye and about $10 per northern. The plan suggested by all three fish farms was to start with walleye and northern, so I did not include bluegills into the equation at this time, but they're priced at about $2, $2.50 to $2.85 per fish. A suggested mix is about 1,000 walleye at about $3,000 total cost, and a total of for northern, about 100 northern at a cost of $1,000. I'm sorry, yeah, $1,000. We should plan on picking up the fish. There are several fish farms in Wisconsin. Only one of them grows their own northern. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. So the total for that project is $4,000, and we may have to repeat this process a few times as well. Stocking would take place in the fall, and we may need to follow this, like I said, follow this process for a few years. The total water clarity project is $7,000. The project benefits the water quality by one, removing bottom feeding rough fish that destroy fish habitat. Two, these bottom feeders stir up phosphorus that sits on the bottom where it's fairly harmless and sends it up into the water where it adds to the cyanobacteria problem and reduces water clarity. And it keeps plants from growing, like what Chuck was saying. Bottom feeders eat zooplankton that would otherwise help reduce cyanobacteria. The project meets our strategic plan by improving water quality issues that were the number one topic identified in our survey. The cost of the project is $7,000 for this year, but may need to be repeated and may need to be adjusted based on results from our first implementation. The timeline, the rough fish tournament would take place in the spring. And we would get help to determine exact days for that. But it would be during the spawning season, and the fish stocking would be a fall application. The reason they do it in the fall is so that for instance, the walleye and northern can grow to a size that will eat the rough fish. We may want to change the way we stock these fish on a year-to-year basis. And that is my proposal.
Heard the proposal. Do we have a motion?
I move to accept Tom's proposal
Okay.
as stated.
There's been a motion to accept Tom's proposal as stated. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second and a half.
Yeah. He beat me, he was quick.
Okay, discussion. There's been a motion and a second. Do we have discussion?
How long is the rough fish tournament?
When we did it in 2018, we ran it for, I think, 3 weekends, like Friday night, Saturday night, or Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, something like that. But we can get volunteers and we can staff it however it works out for us. Most of the fish, and I'm not much of a carp fisherman, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe most of the fish are hunted at night, right? With bow and arrow out of these well-lit boats. So volunteers would probably want to be there early morning for a few hours over the
So-
course of a couple weeks.
Mainly volunteer
Yep.
based
Yep.
activity.
Yep.
the expense is in the bounty that we're gonna pay, correct? For the-
Yes,
For the
yes.
tournament?
Mhm.
So they collect the carp. Well, they hunt them or fish them. And then do they
From
turn
what
them
I
into the
understand, Jerry,
volunteers or what
from what,
happens?
yeah, and they bring them, and what we did was we staged ourselves at Elk Point at the landing. They allowed us to use their landing. We were, allowed the use of a trailer. And, we hauled the rough fish to the, methane digester that's on, was it Five Star?
Yep.
5 Star Farms. And he was more than happy to take them for us. And, over the course of those, I think, 3 weekends, without much publicity, I think we got 700 fish. And from what I understand, as long as they come from Tainter Lake, no one cares how you get them.
Legally.
Yeah, legally, yeah.
What's the illegal way to get around?
Well, you couldn't use dynamite.
I think if you use a net, don't you have to have a permit to use a net? Or some-
Probably
something?
just so you don't net other species of
Right,
fish.
Right. I think that, I think, I think so that we don't get into trouble, we have to say by any legal means.
Well, and Casey's connection to the person that can help run it is probably just do what she's done on other lakes.
For the game.
Yeah, the DNR gal has
Yeah.
I guess a contact, would you call it,
Yeah,
Tom? The
she had
people
a
that do these
friend or-
bounties.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. There's no sense in us reinventing the wheel.
Yeah, I would just do what's been successful other places probably,
Well,
at least to get it started.
yeah, and it's my understanding, or in the back of my mind, because the DNR is not, they're not in their surveys, their census surveys, they're not looking for rough fish. So that gives us data points, also that where we can make a little bit stronger case, maybe for a commercial application. If after 3 years, if we run out of, what did you say, $3,000 for a bounty? If we run out of $3,000 in 2 weekends or whatever, in 2 weeks, that gives us a data set that we can make a pitch for maybe a little wider application.
Mhm.
And like Tom says, if we do that for 2 years and we have that kind of resource, then that makes a stronger case for moving to maybe a more commercial application.
I like it.
Any other discussion? Any other questions?
No, the only thing I'll say is, I was out with Adam earlier this week, looking at the sediment up by the sandbar on the Red Cedar. And there's a lot of sediment out there, so if we can get the carp out and prevent that from getting stirred up, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
All you gotta do is, I plan on being in that tournament. I'm gonna sit in front of Marty's house and
Just hearing him spawning out there, Marty.
Really nice for an afternoon. Big, but I didn't want a female and she just flew eggs, so that saved a couple million right there.
Well, maybe what we can do is start a carp hunting club and,
There we go.
Sure.
They're going.
Yeah.
And they're
I'll get a musky rod and start fishing them. Okay. My granddaughters might get a kick out of that. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and nobody has any other discussion except the chairperson's wise remarks. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now realize, and for the audience sake, we didn't approve this expenditure of $7,000. We approved that to be put on the agenda for the annual meeting to be approved. Okay. All right, now let's get back to the budget. There is a budget proposal. Do I have a motion?
To discuss.
Well, a motion to approve the proposed budget. Maybe the treasurer should make that.
I make a motion to approve the 24-25 proposed budget
Or what is the total on that?
for $60,734.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Jim got there first. There's been a motion to approve it. To approve the proposed budget, and there has been a second by Jim. Discussion. Well,
It's on the screen behind you, so people. can-
Oh, perfect, Jim. Thank you very much. And get your binoculars out or your reading glasses. This is the way that it's going to be presented at the annual meeting. You'll notice the expenditures, just for people's reference. Can you see through me, Marty, or is? Okay. I'll move, I'll tell you what, I'll move this way.
No, you're fine right here. You're fine for me out. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you gotta talk in the micro, just stand up there.
Yeah.
Please.
If you notice how that's the revenues are on top, and realistically, we have the 23-24 budget year. We have what we've spent to date. Or what we've collected to date. And then we have on the far right-hand column, you have the proposed. If you look down at the expenditures, Jim, can you move that up just a titch? A little bit more? Okay, if you look at that, looking at this year's expenditures, you'll see if you compare cost of operations from photocopying technology, conferences, dues and fees, legal, insurance. If you look across there, you'll see that we've kept that all the same. You'll see in project number 1, where we had a project this year of $5,000. Next year, you'll see you'll see 3 projects. One is harvesting, that's harvesting aquatic vegetation. The second one is Tom's Lake Clarity. And the third one is the slow no wake proposal budget for the initial year. Those are the 3 project costs. So if you compare those are the expenditures. You can see what we had budgeted for this year was $15,731. Next year, you'll see that we're proposing $60,734.
Alan Grant, I had a quick question, and I'm not an accountant, so I don't quite understand how everything works, but on the left-hand year budget of 5,000 on the first line for project, nobody's gonna say that we were budgeted 5,000 for harvesting. This was actually something that we had planned for
Right.
this year, correct?
Right, I see what you're saying, that
Yeah.
that 5,000 should be labeled strategic planning.
Okay,
Or-
And the other one should be.
It should be like on a separate line.
Yeah.
Right,
okay.
right, okay, good catch.
We'll do it right now.
Where's our carryover?
Well, that would be the,
It's actual minus total expenditures. So if you're in the second column, if you keep going down, is that, it doesn't,
Is there one more line on that?
So it is on the grant?
yeah, I don't
Okay.
know if Al put it on this one. The way, oh yeah, there it is, 72, seven,
Oh, it's
two,
just
two,
showing the
seven,
balance.
61.
Okay.
Right.
Yep.
Are we gonna put it in a carryover account? I would propose we put it in a carryover.
Thank you. That, well, and what, just for the rest of you, what Jerry's talking about is that anything that we don't spend this year, and we've been really conservative. I tell you what, we get $1.10 out of every dollar we spend. And so there may be a little money left over. And we can, there's two things we can do is that we can give that back and offset the tax levy, which will be a little bit, or we can save that money and carry it over and use that for contingency, building a little bit of dollars.
We should look into what lake districts are required, because I know from a county standpoint that you have to vote on it. You have to vote to carry that forward. And if it was assigned for a specific task, it needs to either stay with that task or there would have to be an agenda item to take those funds and reallocate them somewhere else.
Right.
So
That's a good point. I will research that for the next meeting as to how to do that.
My proposal would be that it's carried over into a.
turn your mic on, Jerry.
For the people at home.
I would like to see a contingency fund and just that any of these projects can go over. And if, I just don't want to run into a negative balance situation. And I think a great deal of that balance is from donations, so.
I think we have to treat the donation money different than the tax money would be my proposal. So I think the donation monies are we're not obligated to make the decisions that Jim was talking about. Simply because it was donated to us. Whereas tax dollars are tax dollars and they come with a little bit different requirements.
My
with it.
point is I'd like them both to go into a contingency fund.
Right.
Yes.
I would totally agree with you.
So to do that, do we have to put that in the budget as far as like, it would be on the cost of operations, but you know, it's pretty much a savings account is what it is. That, you know, we can call it however we want to call it, but so then that's gonna bring your balance to zero.
Right, so what will happen is you'll somehow show that balance becomes zero by moving it into a contingency fund that we would propose and hopefully it gets approved.
As a designated fund, I would
Right.
have it as a designated fund for unintended expenditures or designate a purpose for it.
So is that something that the board can approve to put in, or do we have to go to the annual meeting and say to everybody, how does this carryover work? Or is that part of the research we have to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. All the above.
The answer to the question is, I don't know, but I would think that it can go both ways. Depending on how we want to work it. I would personally, I would just say, we mentioned that on the, like and you were saying that you put it on the balance sheet. And we show that on the balance sheet, and at the annual meeting, we show that at the annual meeting.
Yeah.
And if somebody wants to take and make issue with that, then they can make issue with that, and then they get a vote on it. And so that we do what is required of us at the annual meeting. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That, I mean, that's the way I read it, and that's the way that it gives the community the say and then how it does it. It's financial management is what it is. And what Jerry's proposing is that no business runs without some sort of ability to save money and be able to expend it, or borrow money is the other way to do it. To me, it's easier to save it and then spend it than it is to get into a position where you have to borrow money because money costs money. And so, I mean, especially when we start getting into projects. I mean, we've been blessed that we've done a whole lot of things with volunteers and it hasn't cost us hardly anything to do the projects that we're doing so far. But once we start going, like Jerry says, there's cost overruns, there's everything costs more
Well,
money.
there's also just the idea of we get these payments from the township, in January, February, April and August. When's the bill coming due on some of this stuff? It's just a cash flow crunch. You see what I'm saying? So if we have $7, $10, $15,000 of leeway there where we're not having to
Reserves.
dip into like a line of credit to pay bills because of cash flow, that'll be really nice. I mean, I'll think about that a little bit. What would be a good target number just to try to have in that contingency fund? And maybe that's just something through the first three or 4 years, if we can be efficient as a board and be responsible with our spending, we could just kind of build that up. And
Well, the other thing too is if we're allowed to create those reserves, then there's incentive for us not to spend the budget to 100%.
yeah,
Because if you can't save any money, then all you're doing is spending money. And so, and I don't want the audience and the public to get that you're gonna pad the budget. It's just that, this is a pretty conservative group fiscally. And I think that, but I think some of that fiscal, conservatism needs to be rewarded too. And so that we don't back ourselves into a corner. Good question. I gotta make sure I make note of that grant project.
Al, so Jerry made a motion to place the unspent monies at the year end into a carryover account. Do we need a second? Do we want to make that official? Or is it not prudent at this time?
Let's have that as a second motion on this subject.
Yeah.
And not as a part of an amendment, or unless you want it as an amendment. But I think we need to do a little research before we actually start throwing it into the budget. I'd like to be confident that when we get up and speak at the annual meeting, that we're on solid ground.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the budget? I mean, as far as budget goes, it's pretty straightforward.
Did you want to show the tax impact?
We can.
Cause I've got that, so you can
Yeah.
show it up.
The tax impact is going to be, it's 36 mil or 36 cents a thousand. So it is on $100,000 home, it is the tax for this year would be $36.67. On a the average property value, now that's assessed property value for your tax purpose. If you look at your tax bill, it has your value of your home and then the property, you add those two together, the assessed valuation. The average is
Again, Al, could you repeat that, just so?
on your property tax bill, you look at there's two different values on your property tax. One is fair market value and the other is the assessed value. Okay? And that's the assessed value is what you're taxed at. Okay? The average value of property on the lake is $250,000 average. Now you got to remember, there's a lot that are more, there's some that are less. That's about an average. And remember, that's an assessed valuation. And some townships may be at 80%. Okay, if your township's at 80%, realize that's statutorily, you're gonna get a reassessment in another year or so. Okay, because everybody's got to bring it up to 100%. You can't run it below 100% for long. You have to bring it up, and then they usually bring it up over. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. So it would be a tax increase of for a $250,000 home. It would be the tax impact would be $91. So Grant, that's your $100. $60,000 gets you on average of now. If some are gonna pay more, some are gonna be less. Nobody's gonna pay exactly $100, everybody. So that's the tax impact that we're talking about. Nobody likes increases. But
Nobody likes increases, but I mean, I think $100 a year on average is, you know, it's just, it's not, I don't think it's too much to ask, especially for the potential results that some of these projects could yield, you
Right.
know, and the impact that can have on
Right.
property values and the like,
Right.
so.
But we're up front with everybody and so there's should be no surprises. If I remember correctly, and every township's gonna be a little bit different. But from what we said at the last meeting, I think we were within 20 cents of what I had estimated because I ran my own numbers, but I think we were within about 20 cents of what we said was gonna happen. It was $9 and some for per thousand. Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the budget. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of approving the proposed budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Grant, make sure on that sheet you make a note to label that grant, that so
I
that,
already did it.
okay. Good, then I won't
Google
even,
Sheets in live time. Next time you look at it, it'll be all fixed for you.
yeah, good. I like that. Now I gotta get back to my agenda.
Bylaws.
Oh, here we are. Okay, Jerry, proposed changes to the bylaws.
Okay, I took your,
Oh, wait a minute. Maybe we should have a motion? Or do you want to have an introduction?
let me introduce it.
Okay,
So I took your suggestion, and I read through it multiple times and agreed that a lot of it's good content. Instead of striking it all out, what we put in there. And sorry that you can't see the highlighting, but it's in Article 3, Section 5, electing commissioners. And the changes, if you look very closely, there's a shaded part that says at the first annual meeting of the district, the electors shall, and it starts shading it shall, elect 3 commissioners to the board for a total of 5. Period. If approved, the proposed expansion of the board to 7 is passed, the electors shall and elected 5 commissioners. basically I took out from shall elect 3 commissioners to the board for a total of 5,
Mhm.
up to if. So the electors. Shall meet the electors. Do I need to get that right? Basically, taking out the part about 3 and that we,
Adding 5.
we approve the proposed expansion of the board to 7. Total commissioners, it was passed. Electors shall, elected 5. Elect 5 commissioners. So it's basically the fact that we went from 3 to 5, for a total of 7. And that's done, and so take out the wording around yeah, and so forth. The rest of it, looking through it, I basically thought, well, let's leave it in there. So I went from one extreme where I took out almost everything to this one. Now I just took out a little bit. And I'm open to, you know, if you have the one from last time, but I'm open to slashing any parts of it.
I personally like it as, like you have it. That's just my comment, that, I know that there's the onus is on us to stay current with the statute and any statute changes. But I think from a public, it's from a public perception part, it's easier to put our bylaws on the website for people to understand them than it is to direct them to state statute. And
I like the transparency.
I think you did a good job, and I can appreciate your struggle philosophically.
Yes. So I need to fix Article 5, Section 1 as well. Talks about 7 board members. Let's see. But after reading through it, that's the basic piece I want to change is where we went to 7 and we elect 5.
Okay. All right, is there a motion? Want to make a motion?
So I move that we put forward the new bylaws with the single change around the board being 7 people with 5 elected.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, Chuck Tack seconds it. There's been a motion to just amend the bylaws with the changing the board number of board members to 7 and the supportive language. Any other discussion that we have on that? Any comments from the board members? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Jerry. I know policy is mind-numbing work sometimes. And I'm glad that somebody took it on besides me.
I'll get it.
I really appreciate that, more than you'll ever know. Okay, approval, the next item for action is the approval of the, or not approval of the no wake ordinance, supporting the, and the supporting operational budget.
Probably worded not quite correctly, but because we're not gonna approve the ordinance.
Okay,
Because there is no ordinance to approve until we get the budget to write an ordinance. So we're gonna approve the budget,
okay,
or approve the budget to be placed onto the agenda for the annual meeting.
okay. And you're gonna put that in a motion?
I am going to put that into a motion. I make a motion that we approve the budget for the proposed no wake ordinance, adoption by the Lake District.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. You just want to highlight that, Jim?
I'm gonna
A bit. I've,
share that on the screen.
most of us have looked at it a couple of times, but
I'll share it for here.
So my question, Jim, when you get that up there is just procedural. So we're gonna put in money to write it. And it won't get approved until the next year? Or it can get approved as,
It can get, if it gets approved at the annual meeting, that would be to then go forward from that point forward. So that it could potentially be in place in the expenses for it would need to be taken over for 2025. But the ordinance probably would hopefully could potentially be passed in time for the 2025 like boating season, essentially.
this is for 2025 in essence.
okay. So does this project include the management of the buoys?
Yes,
Does it include it for this fall?
this fall is sort of in a nebulous area where we're gonna take care of it.
I might say that that contingency fund could also be a project to get them out this fall.
Bob, it's kind of taken care of this fall, isn't it? Yeah,
I just hate to. I'm in favor of it professionally. I mean, our volunteers have been wonderful and they're doing a great job. But
yeah, so if
I-
it passes in
Right.
August, it would also cover this fall's removal because
Would
we'd be passing it in August.
thank you.
So-
That's what I'm looking for.
We will find, if they don't have it, I think they have it all lined up with donations and things like, donated time and things like that.
Okay, I just want to find a way that
If,
we help.
if we incur something, I think that's a use of some of our birthday money that we get from Chuck.
From Chuck, yeah.
That would be good use for that money.
And this also, we had we had a public hearing as required at the end of May. And the ad hoc committee had basically a wrap-up meeting after that. So our committee's done. We don't have any more meetings or any other action from the committee. If the budget passes, then there'll need to be probably an ongoing standing committee devoted to the slow no wake zones and the buoys.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I mean, we've talked about this, I think, for every meeting since I mean, if you're new to these discussions, it's not that this is the first discussion. I mean, this has been going.
No, and we had really good participation with the public hearing as well. Not a lot of pushback about it. It's not a huge expense. You can see like the initial expense is $4,000 for the first year, which includes some initial setup and some legal expense. And then the anticipated ongoing budgeting would be about 2,500 per year. So.
Just editorially, one of the things I like is that that budget includes maintenance. That includes replacement so that you don't wind up with buoys that are holding water and you know, they float and they're well marked and people, you know, so.
And
Anyway,
we're budgeting basically based on the Lake District having to purchase all the buoys, but there have already been a number of people who have said they will donate with that funding going toward a buoy.
Maybe we can put a little plaque on the bottom.
Nope, they cannot be modified whatsoever, but they will be, people that donate funds toward a buoy will get other recognition.
Okay, Good. Yeah, that's another, recognition is something else that we should, put on our agenda one of these days. Uh, because there's been a lot of people that have, um, um, donated time and energy and talents and things like that. We should put that on, and I'm not a big organizer for those things. That is just not my skill set. But if somebody likes to party or whatever and wants to do a recognition kind of dinner or something like that, or has that talent, let me know, or knows somebody that has that talent. And so, I think that would be something we should be looking at doing, and maybe this winter. Anyway. There's been a motion and a second to, approve the budget for the no wake ordinance. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. The next, discussion item is the process for nominating, the nominating process. First of all, Pete Heimdahl is not seeking reelection. Pete sent his resignation letter to everybody. Thank you, Pete, for that. Thank you for doing that in a timely fashion, so that gave us a little time. We have, it's my understanding, we have two people that have expressed interest.
We have three.
Three. Okay,
I received another one.
okay. Can you tell us who?
Oh, yes, I can. The first is Adam Muck. The second is Bob Batchelor. And the third is Tim Maves.
Okay, good. So we have three people that are interested. One of the things I want to do before we leave is I put Bob's name on a card here and Tim's name. I'll get one for, or Bob and Adam, and we'll get one, but I want you to draw for order on the ballot. So that, and we put them on the ballot in a random order. But we have to do that. The 45 days for, and as a part of our bylaws, it's 45 days. 45 days is up today, by the way. So it just happens that June 20th is the last day. If we can do that right now, if you just take and give me a second here.
I will post those letters to the social media.
Okay,
send them to me and I'll put them on the website.
I can do that.
nobody, oh, Adam has a hat on. Or Grant has a hat on, but. we can- Hold them once. Put 'em in the hat. You're the secretary. First name in order is
Adam,
second name.
is Tim. The third name, surprise, surprise, is Bob.
Okay, well, we didn't go in alphabetical order. But it is Adam, Tim, and Bob. Okay, and your names will be on the ballot and your applications will be posted on the website. Okay. Anything else on seeking reelection? Okay. Next meeting of the Board of Commissioners is. I look at my calendar. July something,
18.
July 18th. Agenda items.
We're gonna have to talk about the non-lapsable fund.
Okay,
which I just did a little research on, and looks like we need another policy, Jerry, that will spell out. Just in a little bit of research I did here, it says, non-lapsable funds, so it could be designated for unforeseen contingencies, but the district should have a policy creating the amount and purpose of such funds. So I'm thinking we have to set a cap on what we would want that to build to. And then, or maybe we could set that cap really high, but, and then what the purpose of the fund would be, so. Going over on a project, just kind of something to think about.
And school districts, it's usually a percentage of your total expenditures. I don't know what business does.
More the better, but.
But you're not dealing with public's money, so you have a
Yeah.
little more freedom to do that, but
Yeah, so you gotta pick 10% or 20% or whatever is appropriate.
whatever whatever you would think that would be, so the nice thing about a percentage is that it gives you a perception of what it is to the whole, as opposed to just building a fund, but that's something that we can talk about. Jerry, you're on it.
Yeah, I'm on it.
Okay. Okay, non-lapsable fund, we have that. Anything else? One of these meetings, we should have a social event, I'm just saying that it's been about a year and a half now, and I think we're getting to the point where we need some social. Yeah, we have a going away party for Pete.
That would be interesting. I do have an agenda possibility.
Okay.
We need to include anything about planning for the annual meeting at the next meeting.
Well,
Or is this thing planned itself?
here's the way I'm looking at it. Everybody's gonna do this year exactly what they did last year. So if
You're right, Pete, it needs to be an agenda item. Let's talk.
Gonna miss that dry humor, Pete, for sure.
Yeah, I have a checkoff sheet. I'll send it out to everybody. I got the auditorium is reserved. And I put the stuff like we did last year up in front, the projector and those kinds of things, and but we still have the greeters.
Readers,
And-
cards,
Yeah, right,
actual.
right. I got, at least this year, I have the tax rolls already, so I'll send them around. But no, annual meeting planning. Anything else? Okay, without that, I would say that we're due for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
Okay, there's been a motion in a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate people participating.